Hello everyone. Our story this week is quite a grown-up story. It's a story called A Christmas Carol, and it's written by a man called Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was a wonderful writer, and he wrote stories to make people stop and think. He wanted us to think about how we treated other people, and he wanted us to be kinder to each other. Our main character is Ebenezer Scrooge. Have you heard of him? And when we meet him at the start of the story, he is a very angry person. Shall we read the story and find out more? Okay, let's begin. The first chapter is called Scrooge and Marley. Marley was dead as a doornail. All that remained of the firm Scrooge and Marley was Ebenezer Scrooge. Scrooge. A grasping, greedy, gruesome old man. He was as hard as stone and as cold inside. His face looked frozen. Scrooge didn't care about anyone, and hardly anyone cared about him. Even Christmas cheer couldn't thaw out his icy heart. One Christmas Eve, he had been busy in his counting house. He had left his office door open to keep an eye on his clerk, poor Bob Cratchit. Can you see him? He's looking at Bob Cratchit, making sure Bob Cratchit is working hard enough. Well, of course Bob Cratchit is working hard enough. He's a really nice man, but he's so cold it's hard for him to hold his pen. Suddenly, who came in? "Merry Christmas, Uncle," cried a cheery voice suddenly. It was Scrooge's nephew, Fred. "Bah, humbug," said Scrooge. "If I had my way," Scrooge added, "every idiot who said Merry Christmas would be cooked in their own cake. What right have you to be happy? You're poor. What right have you to be miserable? You're rich," replied his nephew. "Really, Uncle," said Fred, come and eat with us tomorrow." "Good afternoon," said Scrooge, returning to his books and ignoring his nephew. So Fred left, and as he left the door open, and two men came in. They were collecting money for the poor. They asked Scrooge if he would give them some money. "Are there no prisons?" he said. "No workhouses? I pay for them, and that is enough." Can you see them asking Scrooge for money? "Humbug," he says. "No," and he will not help. The two men went back out into the cold, shaking their heads. A little later, a scruffy boy paused at Scrooge's office door and began to sing, "God bless you, merry gentlemen." But one look at Scrooge and he ran away before he finished singing. Finally, it was time to go home. "You'll want the whole day off tomorrow, I suppose," Scrooge snapped at poor Bob. "If it's convenient, sir," said Bob. "It isn't. Be here all the earlier the next day." How would you feel if you've only got one day off for Christmas? Imagine that. 1 day's holiday, and Scrooge isn't even happy about letting him have 1 day's holiday. That's really mean, isn't it? Scrooge left the office with a growl. Bob quickly got up and set off for home. He couldn't wait to get home to see his family. Scrooge went for his usual lonely dinner all by himself. And then he too set off for home. A few gloomy rooms in an old house which once belonged to his partner, Marley. Chapter 2. Marleys Ghost. The door knocker on the house was not unusual. It was just large. But as Scrooge put the key in the door, the knocker changed into Marley's face. Can you see? Look. Wow. That's quite scary, isn't it? Let's find out what happens next. Startled, Scrooge turned his key and went in. Was the back of Marley's head sticking out into the hall? No, it was only screws. Pah, humbug, he said, closing the door with a bang. But he checked all the rooms just in case before he got ready for bed. Without warning, an old bell began to ring. It started quite quietly, but soon rang louder and louder, along with every other bell in the house. Suddenly, the bells stopped and a clanking noise followed, as if someone in the cellar was dragging a heavy chain. And then slowly something came through the door. Look, can you see? Wow. Did you see? Scrooge could not believe it. Why don't you believe your eyes? Said the ghost. Marley's ghost, it can't be, said Scrooge. Why don't you believe your eyes? Repeated the ghost. Because even an upset stomach can disturb the senses, Scrooge told him. Maybe the milk was sour and giving me nightmares. The ghost let out a frightful cry and rattled his chains. Ah! Mercy, mercy, said Scrooge. Why do you trouble me? Again, the ghost shook his chains. And why are you chained up? Scrooge asked. These chains are a punishment for my selfish life, the ghost said. There are some waiting for you too, and they are getting heavier every day. So every bad thing that Scrooge does, every selfish thing that Scrooge does, adds another one of these links to the chain. So Scrooge's chain is getting longer and longer. He was horrible to his nephew. He was rude, wasn't he? He was unkind to Bob Cratchit. And did he help when the men came collecting money to help other people? No, he didn't. So every time he does a selfish thing, he gets another link on the chain. So Scrooge's chain is very long indeed. There are some waiting for you too, and getting heavier every day, said the ghost. But you were so good at business, Scrooge said to his friend. My only business should have been taking care of others, said Marley. Can you see him with his chains? They're long, aren't they? And Scrooge's are even longer than that. I've come here tonight to warn you, said the ghost. You might even escape my fate. Scrooge looked relieved. You will be haunted by 3 spirits, the ghost went on. Oh, I think I'd rather not, said Scrooge. The ghost ignored him and headed to the window. Scrooge closed the window and checked the door. It was still locked. Hum, he began, but the words stuck in his throat. Worn out, partly from shock, partly because it was 2 a.m. by now, Scrooge fell into bed and was soon fast asleep. Can you see the ghost leaving by the window? It's the ghost of his friend, and his friend has come to help him. He wants Scrooge to stop and think and not make the same mistakes as him. Do you think Scrooge is going to listen? We'll find out soon. Chapter 3. The First Spirit. Scrooge awoke in total darkness. To his surprise, the clock chimed 12. He lay awake, fearfully counting down to the next hour. On the stroke of 1, a hand drew back the curtain around his bed. Scrooge gasped. He was face to face with the strangest creature he had ever seen. A light shone out at the top of his head, and it carried a cap like a candle snuffer that went over the top. "Are you the spirit I was told about?" he asked. "I am," said the ghost softly. "I am the ghost of Christmas past. Your past. Rise and walk with me," said the spirit. Can you see him? Scrooge looks really frightened, doesn't he? Let's see what happens next. Scrooge clung to the spirit as he floated out through the window, not into a foggy city, but a very bright day out in the country. "I was a boy here," Scrooge cried. The ghost took him to an old schoolroom where a lonely boy sat all alone. "I wish I had given the carol boy something," thought Scrooge when he saw the boy all on his own. But before he knew it, they were back in the busy city and entering a warehouse where there was a party in full swing. "Ah, and I was an apprentice here," cried Scrooge. "Here's my master, old Fezziwig. He made us all so happy." Why didn't I make Bob have a Merry Christmas? Why didn't I do that? Scrooge thought. Can you see him? As a child, all on his own in the schoolroom. And then, as he grew older, at work having a lovely party. It made him think about the way he treated the carol singer, didn't it? And about the way he treats poor Bob. The party faded, leaving Scrooge and the spirit outside. There was a younger Scrooge again, sitting beside a beautiful girl. "I cannot marry you," she said. "You love money more than you love me." "Spirit, show me no more," said Scrooge. "One shadow more. Watch," replied the spirit. The scene changed again, and Scrooge found himself in a comfy room filled with children. There was his old love, now married to another man. "Spirit, remove me. I cannot bear it," he said. "This is what happened. Do not blame me," said the spirit. So can you see? Scrooge was once in love with a lady. He really loved her, but she thought that he loved money more, and so she wouldn't marry him. Oh, poor Scrooge. Scrooge began to struggle with the ghost. As he did, he noticed the light on its head burning brighter and brighter and brighter, even more brightly. So Scrooge grabbed the spirit's cap and put it back down over its head, pressing down hard. The spirit sank down, and Scrooge sank into a deep, deep sleep. Chapter 4. The Second Spirit. Scrooge woke up back in bed as the clock struck 1. He sat up nervously, but nothing happened. He flung back his curtains, but no, there was no one there. Finally, Scrooge got up and went into the next room. He could hardly recognise it, and right in the middle sat the second spirit. "Come in and know me better. I am the ghost of Christmas present." Can you see this ghost? Can you see all the things around him? He looks like quite a jolly ghost, doesn't he? He looks very happy. Did you see the big fire? Scrooge has never had a fire like that before, has he? Scrooge followed the ghost through the streets full of people, all getting ready for Christmas. Finally, they came to Bob Cratchit's house, where Mrs. Cratchit was getting the Christmas dinner ready. "Where are my father and Tiny Tim?" "Here's Father," cried the two youngest, as Bob came in carrying his invalid son. Soon, everyone was enjoying the feast. It was a small meal for such a large family, but no one would dream of saying so. "A Merry Christmas to us all," said Bob Cratchit, God bless everyone, said Tiny Tim. Can you see them? They're having a lovely family Christmas, and even though their Christmas dinner is quite small, no one would say so. Everybody's smiling and having a good time, especially Tiny Tim, who's the youngest. Spirit, said Scrooge suddenly, tell me, will Tiny Tim live? I see an empty chair, said the ghost. If things stay as they are, Tiny Tim will die. Scrooge felt terrible, but then he heard his name. To Scrooge, who provided the feast, cried Bob. Provided our feast indeed, snorted his wife. I wish he was here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast on. By now it was getting dark, and the ghost led Scrooge back outside onto the bustling streets. They flew to quieter, emptier places, but everywhere Scrooge saw people full of Christmas spirit. So Mrs Cratchit is quite angry with Scrooge because she knows he doesn't pay her husband enough money for the work that he does. But Bob Cratchit is a very kind man, and he says Merry Christmas to Mr Scrooge. And out they fly onto the streets where they can see everybody having a lovely time at Christmas. And all of this is making Scrooge think. And in the midst of the gloom, they suddenly heard a hearty laugh. It had to be his nephew, Fred. They had arrived in the middle of Fred's Christmas dinner party. Exactly, and he said Christmas was humbug. Shame on him, said the guests. Who do you think they're talking about? Who says humbug all the time? Do you know what humbug means? It means nonsense, rubbish. And that's what Scrooge thinks of Christmas. Well, I feel sorry for Scrooge, said Fred. Now, how about a game of blind man's buff? One game followed another. Scrooge grew so excited he joined in, though no one could see him or hear him. Scrooge wanted to stay until the very last guest had left, but the ghost said no. Oh, just one more game then, Scrooge pleaded. It's a new one called Yes and No. Shall we see what game they're playing? See if you can guess who they're talking about. Is it an animal? Yes. Does it live in the country? No. Does it growl? Yes. Shame on him. Yes. I know. It's your uncle. It's Scrooge. Yes. So who is it they were guessing? Ebenezer Scrooge. Scrooge it is, cried Fred, and I wish him a very merry Christmas wherever he is. Before Scrooge could wish Fred the same, the ghost had whisked him away. They went all over the world, and everywhere they went, they saw people rejoicing and hope. But the ghost was growing old. My life is brief, said the spirit. It ends at midnight. Already the clock was chiming 11:75. Forgive me for asking, said Scrooge, but is there something hidden in your robes? Look, the ghost replied, revealing two miserable children, so two very sad children. The boy is called Ignorance. The girl is called Want. Beware both, but especially the boy. So can you see what's hiding inside? The boy represents ignorance. That means when you're not thinking about other people and you're not thinking about how other people might feel. And the girl represents want. That means when people need things. Not special things like presents, but they need everyday things like food and somewhere to live. Have they nowhere to go? Asked Scrooge. Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? The spirit replied, using Scrooge's own words. The clock struck 12, and the spirit vanished. And as the last chime died away, Scrooge saw a hooded phantom coming closer. Oh wow, I wonder what's going to happen in chapter 5. Chapter 5, The Last Spirit. The phantom floated silently up to Scrooge. "Are you the ghost of Christmas yet to come?" he asked. The phantom said nothing, but he pointed his ghostly hand. Can you see him pointing? Poor Scrooge, he looks so frightened, doesn't he? "Ghost of the future," cried Scrooge, "I fear you more than any other, but I shall go with you." Staying silent, the ghost glided off. As Scrooge followed, the city seemed to spring up around them. "I don't know much. I only know that he is dead. I wonder who he left his money to." Not me. No one liked him. They left the crowds and went to another part of the town that Scrooge had never visited before. As they entered a junk store, 3 people came in and with things to sell. "I've got a pencil case and a brooch," said one of them. So can you see he's visiting 2 places? In the first one, he hears about a man who's died, but no one seems to like that man very much at all. In the second place, he's hearing about people who've got things to sell. But where did they get those things from? Let's have a look. "I've sheets and towels, 2 teaspoons and some boots. See, his bed curtains, I took 'em down while he was lying there." Scrooge was horrified. These things had been stolen from a dead man's house. "Spirit, I see," he cried. "This poor man could be me." As he spoke, the scene changed. Now they were in a bedroom. A dead man lay on the bed, alone but for a cat and some rats. The phantom pointed to the man's face, but Scrooge couldn't look. "Is no one moved by this man's death?" he begged. So he said, "Is no one sad because this man has died?" The phantom spread out his dark robe for a second, and when he drew it back, Scrooge was in a room where a man and a wife were talking. "We owe him so much money," said the woman. "It would take a miracle to soften his heart." "We don't need a miracle," said the man. "His heart, it's past softening. He's dead." "But they were happy," said Scrooge. "Let me see sorrow for a death spirit, please." So the phantom took him to the Cratchit's house. Mrs. Cratchit and her children were by the fire. An air of sadness hung over them. So can you see, in one place he took them, there are a man and a lady. And they were worried about money. They owed lots of money to this man who does not sound very nice. And they were worried about it. But now the man has died, they don't have to worry anymore. The other place the spirit took him to was the Cratchit's house. And in the Cratchit's house, everybody is sad. Can you think why that might be? You're right, it's to do with Tiny Tim. All the Cratchits are sad. As Scrooge watched them, he had a feeling that the phantom was about to leave. "Before you go, tell me, who was the man in the bed?" he begged. The phantom said nothing, but took Scrooge to a churchyard. "He lies here?" said Scrooge. Silently, the ghost pointed to a gravestone. "Answer me one question," asked Scrooge. "Have I seen what will happen or what might happen?" Still, the ghost was silent. So Scrooge is really frightened. He says, "Are all these things that you're showing me, are they things that definitely will happen, or are they just things that might happen?" Trembling all over, Scrooge crept up to the gravestone and read the name upon it. Can you see what it says? Ebenezer Scrooge. So it's his name on that gravestone. With a terrible cry, Scrooge grabbed the ghost's robes. "No, spirit, no!" But the phantom simply pointed to Scrooge and back to the gravestone. "I'm not the man I was," Scrooge cried. "Let me change." Scrooge closed his eyes to pray, and when he opened them again, the phantom had become his bedpost. So he closes his eyes to say a prayer to ask for help. And when he opens them again, the phantom has disappeared and he is back in his bed. And that's the end of chapter 5. One more chapter to go. Chapter 6. A Merry Christmas. He was back in his own bed. "Ha ha," he laughed. "I'm as light as a feather. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. Thank you, Marley. From now on, I will keep Christmas in my heart all year round. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what month it is. I don't care," he burbled. Just then, the church bells rang out. Scrooge raced to his window. "What day is it today, boy?" "Today? Today? Why, it's Christmas Day," called the boy. The spirits had done all their work in one night. Can you see Scrooge calling out? What day is it? And he can't believe it. He hasn't missed Christmas. Scrooge chuckled and sent the boy off to buy the best butcher's turkey. "I'll send it to Bob Cratchit," he said to himself, and he rubbed his hands together with happiness. "It's twice the size of Tiny Tim." When the boy returned with the turkey, Scrooge gasped. The bird was huge. "Will you deliver it for me?" he asked, chuckling some more. "You'll need a cab." And he paid for the boy, found him a cab, and then went back inside, still chuckling. He chuckled until the tears rolled down his cheeks. Have you ever done that? Laughed so much because you were happy? Laughed until you cried? Scrooge, it's like he's been holding in all these feelings and now he's laughing. They're just spilling out, and it's just lovely. At last he was dressed in his best and he went outside. He looked so cheerful that several people said, "Good morning." One even said, "Merry Christmas." Scrooge thought they were the most beautiful words he had ever heard. He hadn't gone far when he came across the men who had been collecting for the poor the day before. "Merry Christmas," he cried. The two men looked shocked. Was this really Scrooge? "Forgive me for being so rude the other day," he said. "Come to my office and I will make it up to you." Can you see he's trying to put things right? He's trying to make sure that he fixes all the mistakes that he made. Feeling better, Scrooge went to church and then for a long walk. He had never been so happy. In the afternoon, he went to his nephew Fred's house. He went up to the door a dozen times before he finally dared to knock. Think he's feeling a little bit shy? Bit shy? I think so. Fred welcomed him to the party with such delight that Scrooge soon felt at home in 5 minutes. Well, we might have known that Fred would be kind. He's always been a kind person, hasn't he? It was such a wonderful party but Scrooge was at work early the next day. He wanted to catch Bob Cratchit coming in late, and he did. Bob was nearly 20 minutes late. "And just what do you mean by this?" Scrooge pretended to be furious. "I'm not going to stand for it any longer. Step into my office," he said. "But it's only once a year," said Bob. "I'll tell you what I'm going to do," Scrooge went on, poking him in the ribs. "I'm going to raise your salary," he shouted. "Merry Christmas, Bob. Now, put some more coal on the fire before you pick up your quill." Can you see Bob's face? He's so shocked. He's going to give him some more money, and he's going to put more coal on the fire. Who is this person? Is it really Scrooge? Scrooge promised to take care of Bob and his family, and he was as good as his word. Tiny Tim did not die. He became a second father to him. Not only that, he became a good friend to all who lived in the town. Some people laughed to see the change in him, but Scrooge let them laugh. He didn't care. He knew laughing was good for them, and his own heart laughed with them. Can you see how happy he is? So he's looking after Tiny Tim now. He's going to make sure that Tiny Tim stays healthy and has all the things that he needs. And he never saw the spirits again, but it was always said of him that he knew how to keep a jolly Christmas. And may that be true of all of us. And so, in the words of Tiny Tim, God bless us, every one. And there we are. The story ended happily. Scrooge realised the mistakes he was making. Those spirits taught him the lessons that he needed to learn, didn't they? And now he understands Christmas. Christmas is about being kind, and it's about helping others. And that was Charles Dickens' message that he wanted to make sure everybody got. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and I hope that you've enjoyed the story. I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.
We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy Tidings we bring wherever we go. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a